So there we are. Good morning from the UK. After watching Joe Biden and Donald Trump debate, there's so many things that come to mind of Donald Trump's. He's a president of America and he lacks. It made me think of these idiots on YouTube who lack social skills. He lacks the social skill, or perhaps he's scared that Biden might actually be able to say something and complete a whole sentence within a context and come to a conclusion. So it's been said that Biden is like Sleepy Joe, is the term that Trump came out with. Sleepy Joe. I don't think Joe's that sleepy. The media of like mainstream media, certain media outlets want to have a story, and they will use bits of truth like that, where sometimes Joe might be a bit senile, perhaps it's been said, and they play on that because it's something to write about, and they play a lot on a lot of what Trump says, because Trump's always hyperbolic, he's not politically correct, and yeah, he's a president and so on, and all they want is a story. The media really want Trump to continue to be in power because it's good for their business, because he's always going to say something that is outlandish and weird and stupid, and being pointed out that he's dismissing the scientific advisors over the whole COVID issue is something else that is very important. Now the Trumps have COVID. Oh dear. Hope they're going to be okay, because it's not something you wish on somebody. He wouldn't let Biden articulate, and it was obvious what Biden was trying to say. Yes, open schools, but open them safely with mask and equipment. Trump was trying to say the masks don't do anything. Yeah. Let me remind you again, the Trumps have COVID. The masks do help. It's basic, simple physics of breathing when it gets colder, and particularly in a dry environment. The risk then is not so much surfaces, it's breathing in whatever people are breathing out. Droplets that come out of your breath, moisture, travel further in cold and dry air. We're getting into the fall now. We're getting into the northern hemisphere winter. If you have high humidity, by the way, Spain's very dry, it doesn't have high humidity, and it does have a lot of heat, which means probably people in blocks of buildings having air conditioning, cooling things down. Then they're going up and down in lifts, up and down stairs to get to the buildings. They're all stacked up, their cities are all stacked up. Conclusion, hopefully you got a conclusion as to what's going on there, right? Because viruses prefer dry and cold. Not too cold, obviously. Not too hot. It's like anything, really. I mean, the thing is, people talk about killing it. You can't kill that which isn't alive. Go and look up. Viruses are not alive. A scientist or biologist will tell you that the virus is not a living thing, but it needs biology, living material, to replicate. So there he is, dissing the use of Biden, yes. Every time I see Biden, he has a huge mask on and all this. It's been said he didn't listen to scientific advisors properly. He's too narcissistic. Again, if you want to be president or that kind of power, there's going to be some narcissism there already, or some kind of egocentric orientation, I guess. Maybe if you actively want that kind of power, but when they get into power, they discover they're not really that powerful. There seems to be not so much these days, but in the past, there's much more of a delusion, thinking that people think that the President of America is suddenly the most powerful person in the world. It couldn't be further from the truth, in my opinion. Any politician, president, or political group, person, political campaigner will get whispers in their ears for things like, if you do something, from corporations, if you do these certain things that you've said about, we'll fund you for that because it helps our business. As soon as they veer off track and not quite doing what a corporation or big, large company wanted, they don't get funded anymore. And then they don't deliver what they promise. They promise in the world. It's all about contracts. It really is. I don't think, people think Congress got a huge amount of power. I think the most power would lie with Congress, and makes sense, as opposed to president anyway. It's almost like, he's just the front guy, the whipping guy. I don't pretend to understand American politics, so I could be wrong, but one thing about Trump's narcissistic personality, he thinks he's invincible, and he thinks his word is all true, like he's all-knowing, he never makes mistakes. Okay, he's been good for the economy, but what now? Media, again, have a huge amount of power, and they talked about Trump having COVID. Suddenly the markets drop. People withdraw their shares, which lowers a company's value. Finances. Huge, massive drop. But because media got that kind of power, media could say something about a company that might have trouble here and there, but they put it in such a way it causes people to panic, right, I'm withdrawing my shares in. Because they use frameworks, they use perspectives rather than flat out lies that leads people to a conclusion that isn't necessarily true. They use worldviews. So this is probably going to happen because of when it's whatever it might be. Because Biden, I don't think like I said, he doesn't appear to be that sleepy. He said some important things which made sense to me. Trump will say things that might be important on their own, but he fills it out. He keeps repeating it himself. Let's say some team working on something, perhaps for scientific data for the statistics of the virus, of which symptoms are the most important, perhaps anything like that. He'll be talking about, let's say, talking about a group doing that. And he pretends he knows details. You say that they're a great group, I have faith in them, they're really strong people, really good group, great group. I really think they're going to do a good job, that they worked hard. It's all hot air. He doesn't have a clue of what he's talking about. He's a salesman. He's a salesman, definitely. Worse than that, he seems to behave like a door-to-door salesman. Why does a door-to-door salesman go door-to-door? It's because they have to. Why do they have to? Because their product is shit. And they need to give you all this rhetoric, filled out hot air, to try and convince you that somehow this product is going to be beneficial for your life. It's going to change your life. It's going to be really good. You know, salesman talk. This is a great product. It'll help you in your daily life. It's really good. We had a great team create this. We're working hard. We're pushing out production now. He's a salesman. He talks about speedy putting out of vaccines. Vaccines need trials. You don't want to push out into the public something that hasn't had enough trial, because you don't want to make people sicker than the virus makes people. Then you got a real nasty problem. Most vaccines work by deactivating the virus that it's supposed to vaccinate, like a deactivated version of it in the vaccination, and you might get symptoms. It fools the body into thinking that it's got the virus, and then immunity is built, and it goes on from there. I don't know is the exact science. But you don't even hear Trump talking in those terms. And yet he won't listen to his scientific advisors anyway, from what I can tell. People say yes, he did everything he could. I begin to wonder because of the rhetoric he puts out. And Biden, said word for word, "Will you shut up?" You see, when you're that narcissistic, that self-important, all you're doing is, and on top of that, if all you're doing is talking, while you're talking, you're not listening. How the fuck are you going to learn anything new if you're not paying attention to new information? Trump thinks he knows it all already, so he doesn't have to listen according to his worldview. I feel really bad for America. A two-party political system. Perfect recipe for disaster, in my opinion, and many others. A lot of people saw things like this coming for America. You're going to have very little choice of the clowns that get into power. I think we should give America should give Biden a go. Because I think it was utterly disgusting on Trump's behalf of a debate that should be a debate. You can't have a debate unless you're talking to yourself. You can't have a debate if you're talking to yourself, because if that's all he wants is to hear his own opinion and not other people's and learn anything new, let Biden finish. He would never let him finish. He was told by the moderator, "You have 2 minutes, go." The other person, Biden or Trump, whichever, "You have 2 minutes to go." Biden was nice enough to let, I think he might have interrupted Trump once or twice, but for the most part, he was cooperative enough to let Trump have his 2 minutes. Why couldn't Trump do the same for Biden? What's Trump scared of? Which brings me to Trump's excuse of when he said, "Oh, it'll all be gone, the virus, like a miracle in the summer," so on. The sunlight are burning off. Again, not really detailed. UV light tends to deactivate viruses, yes. But he didn't even give details on that. He gave an obscure, stupid comment on that a separate time. Um, he has no clue. He has a lot of money. He's an American with all the toys, all the money, with no clue. And it was pointed out how he, as an individual, should be more careful. And here we are. The Trumps have this virus. Of course, any politician would be at more risk than some other people. Some other people, because they gotta go places, they gotta do their rallies, they gotta be in certain situations, which means it should be even more strict. He should be wearing a mask. I wear a mask when I'm out in the UK. Not necessarily in the main street, but as soon as I enter a building, mask goes on. We have to now anyway, because there is a fine anyway. But they should have brought that in the UK from the get-go. We could have solved a lot of problems there. Some individuals, granted, they don't have to for medical reasons, but they need to prove that. They need an ID around their neck or whichever. Otherwise, nah. It's like, you know, if your name's not down, you're not coming in, kind of thing. And I agree with that. It should be done that way. Those of you who think the virus thing is a hoax, I don't know what to say. It's easier to think it's all a fake thing than it is to face the reality, and people get addicted to mysteries rather than really wanting to know the truth. Then you end up like Trump. When you're not doing your own due diligence. Wearing a mask is not so much to protect you as to protect other people anyway. Because if you're carrying it, 2 weeks incubation. This is why there's 2 weeks quarantine if anyone has come over from abroad back to the UK. We have a peak now because, from what I can tell, and it might even be down to just one person who calls it to flare up again, it might. But then there's environmental issues with it being cooler now this time of year, getting into the fall, and we had some cold and dry days prior to the peak as well. Combine that with an idiot that comes over from, I'm not sure where they came from, but some place abroad. You have to quarantine. He didn't quarantine. He went on a pub crawl. A pub crawl, you know, one pub and go into another pub. How many people did he infect during that? It's one of the reasons I'm not really going to public bars anymore anyway for a while. There are some places I go, but in the day, because it's more of a restaurant come public bar anyway, so, and it's some quiet places where I might take the laptop with me and work on exploratoryminds.com. We need to explore situations with our mind and be so damn lazy and pretend there's a fantasy out there in the world, your preferred fantasy, and truth and reality and facts just don't happen. Because you end up like Kyle Curtis with that as well. Look how much denial this individual has via his own narcissistic individuality, his own fantasies of some kind of persona that he wants people to believe he is, but it's only a millimeter deep, if that, and it's transparent really once you really get to know Kyle. You know, there's many cracks in that. You know, I think it was Paul Potts. That's the wrong one. Benjamin Potts, sorry. Paul Potts is a singer. Benjamin Potts, who said, on camera, he's fine. You know, you might see somebody who seems to be larger than life and amicable and that, but the closer you get to knowing him, all that completely falls apart. And we've seen that with his attitudes. Guy needs mental therapy. I'm not trying to stick up for him. I will never ever. With what he's done is utterly disgusting, and he needs to be punished for it. I think the positive bells of ringing for Kyle would be trinkets of evidence where he's no longer as addicted as he has been in the past to getting a feel-good factor, people buttering him up, a dopamine hit and so on, and then progress more and more as leveling that down to some kind of normality there, other than begging, absolutely begging on his knees for the kind of attention that is like, oh, I like Kyle, he looks good, he looks very attractive, oh, isn't his hair nice, or whatever list of compliments is in his brain that it doesn't really relate to anything that he has as true amicable skills to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And it's the same thing with Trump. He needs to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but his narcissism is in the way. You hear it in what he says. You know, okay, he might have thousands of people at the rally and Biden just a few, but their worldview has been coloured very much by media as well. I don't see that Americans who go to these rallies as critical thinkers for the most part. Those who don't show up are probably more critical in thinking and do vote anyway. I would hope they do. With a two-party political system, though, it's very easy for it to flip around very quickly with something like this. Trump's whole attitude, I think, is utterly disgusting. That wasn't a debate. That was, I'm Trump and everyone must hear my voice because everyone else is wrong. Wow. This is just a vile attitude, I think, and I don't think he's long term, another 4 years. You just, I mean, hopefully there is a successful mitigation of the virus, regardless if there is or not. I don't think Trump's good for America. I don't. In the long term, Trump's a short-term mindset. We've done this, we've succeeded at this and that, but he doesn't think about consequences or future planning, from what I can tell. And if there's any validity to that claim, it's been said that he's had businesses go into liquidation, then he uses that money to create another business and goes into it. He's like on a rolling down a hill. Momentum's going fine, great, you got momentum, but where's the steering? It's great to have momentum. I think I have more steering than I do as momentum at the moment with certain things that I'm working on, but there is momentum at least. But you need to steer things in the right direction, otherwise it's just all going to fall apart. You need a future plan. You can't have a short-term addiction to succeeding in the moment without planning for a few moments and weeks and perhaps a month or two in the future, knowing how, planning, is this still going to be useful in the future? You have to think like that. If you're a in a position of power. You don't dig a hole and say, "Hey, look at this hole," and we're going to build stuff in it, and you don't get the finance, and all you're building it is just filling it back up, and there's no hole there. No hole for foundations. Right. I think that's a reasonable metaphor. I might have buggered that one up slightly, but I think the message has come across. Vote Biden. What you got to lose? You ain't got much to lose between the two of them, actually. You might have something to gain from Biden, who's more passionate about doing the right thing for the country, I think. Whereas Trump's too passionate about doing the right thing, convincing people that he's doing the right thing for the country, but really it's all about him. Everything is all for him, about him, in his worldview. That's what he seems to advertise to me. Could I be wrong? I want to be wrong. I'd rather Trump be such an amazing person, but he's not that amazing. He's just another narcissistic problem in the world. Narcissism is a problem in human nature. It's a big problem, particularly when delusions of superiority come along with it, and all they want to do is hear themselves. Biden said, "Will you shut up?" Trump didn't want to debate. I think Trump was annihilated, but there he is tweeting that he succeeded really well. I see very, very dysfunctional individuals on YouTube doing that. They go on live feeds and they start shouting and even angry, some of these. And they won't let no one talk at all. And they say things like, "If you replay this afterwards, my message always gets across." Yeah, because nobody else is allowed to talk. That's why, because you keep talking over them. Your message might be a message, but everyone's got a message. Is it the right one? Is it a coherent one? Is it a logical one? Is it a critical one? Is it worth time and effort for the future? It blows my mind. And maybe I'm biased or misinformed, but I think Trump, for a country to have somebody like Trump, who's clearly not that well enough educated even to be doing his thing, how can that be allowed to happen? I think people across the world warned America that this is where you're headed. People in America warned Americans, this is where you're headed. But the mantra back, the noisy ones would say, "This is America, you don't know nothing, this is America." How many times do we hear that? This is America. Over and over and over. Land of opportunity. You're way too liberal. Only in America would you get a museum based on creationism. That's not liberating people. That's let's dumb people down and teach them a bunch of shit, rather than pointing out how ridiculous creationism is. Darwinism might have some holes in it, perhaps, but scientifically, it's the best thing we have. I forget what the argument was. There might have been something there, but it seems to be fairly tight to me. It seems to be logical, but that's one example of many. people going to these big flat earth groups. They shouldn't even be allowed to do a flat earth talk, because it's particularly, you know, if they're talking to much younger people who just don't know yet. Being told, oh, what you're being taught in school is all a lie while they're going to school. Only in America could that happen. The education system is, you know, it's a joke. America's Achilles heel, though, its secret weapon is the visa, where foreigners come over and set up and do things that are very beneficial, not just for America, but for everyone else. Look at SpaceX. Elon Musk isn't a American citizen originally. He's from South Africa. So Trump, being super narcissistic and America's the best and this and that, tweets on Twitter one day as Elon Musk is perfect example of American ingenuity, or whatever it was. Trump tweets back, I'm from South Africa, you idiot. Kind of paraphrase that. I don't know what the exact words were, but you get the point. This delusion of people in power has to stop, because it literally ends up the blind people leading. People have been blinded by just bullshit. The media have got a lot to answer for as well. I think, you know, colouring people's worldview who, I mean, are encouraged not to be that critical in their thought processes as well. I haven't got the perfect answer, I don't know. But I think Biden should be given a go. I don't think he's Sleepy Joe as much as Trump would try to make out. I could be wrong. We'll find out. Thanks for watching, take care, and I look forward to doing another video soon. Cheers, bye.